Hello and welcome to this blog. What I've done is to give a summary of a particular worldview, identifying problems with the world today and putting forward ideas to fix it. It's a sketch, it's trying to communicate the gist of the ideas rather than detailed facts. So I started off with this one, why I'm not cool with Thatcher. She destroyed the unions. She redistributed wealth from the poor to the rich. This is really the crux of the matter. This is what she's all about, in my eyes. She laid waste to entire communities in the north of England. It was not the birth of ambition, but the death of solidarity. She promoted selfishness and greed. Neoliberal economics. It's all about the free market, with the result of redistributing wealth from the poor to the rich. Sold arms to murderous tyrants in the Third World. Friends with General Pinochet, who tortured thousands and threw millions into poverty. Privatisation, no compassion for the weak. She had some rather dodgy friends, not only General Pinochet, but people like Jimmy Savile too. Bring in Section 28, so socially reactionary. Bring in Section 28. She said people are growing up thinking they have a right to be gay, so she clearly thinks people don't have a right to be gay. Conservatives at the time were deeply against the anti-apartheid movement, i.e. they were standing up for apartheid. Young conservatives wore badges saying, "Hang Nelson Mandela," and this was the party of Maggie. She saw people primarily as consumers rather than workers, but the rich do the majority of the consuming and the poor do the majority of the working. So a consumer-centrist politics favours the rich. This was borne out by events. She was friends with Ronald Reagan, who was not a nice guy. He sent countless death squads to terrorise Central America. I looked online to see what kind of arguments people had against her here. So, we can just look at some of these. The Falklands deliberately gave the impression of not wanting the islands so she could launch a war to save her flagging reputation back home. 10 times more Argentinian casualties than British. Regressive taxation. Overall taxation stays constant at 40% of GDP. Same level of tax and spend, but the burden of taxation goes on the poor and the uses of taxation goes on the military rather than health and education. Widening gap between rich and poor. How can the richest 50% owning 97% of the wealth be fair? This was her starting position and she moved almost exclusively, wealth moving almost exclusively to the richest 10% at the expense of the poorest 50%. We can see some more points here.